So next I will introduce Dr. Val Valle. She is a licensed psychologist who specializes in sports and performance psychology. She is responsible for providing comprehensive psychological services to our student athletes. She also provides psychological assessments, individual and group therapy. She conducts research, trains psychology interns, and consults with various local youth sport organizations. Dr. Valle was previously a member of the NFL NCAA mental health think tank as a subject matter expert. She's a certified consultant with the Association for Applied Sports Psychology, and she's listed on the United States Olympic Committee Sports Psychology Registry. Welcome, Dr. Valle.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name is Val Valle. I'm a clinical psychologist who specializes in sport and performance psychology. And what is that exactly? Well, it's someone who is very interested in working with athletes and helping them to develop the ideal mindset and to practice psychological skills required for success, not just in sport, but in life. Currently, my job is at IMG. IMG is a boarding school for sports. And so at IMG Academy, I work with 1,100 student athletes coming from all over the world. They represent 70 countries nationwide, and often English is their second language coming to the school. They're boarding from 6th grade to post-grad, so that's from 12 to about 19 or 20, but we also offer pre-K, so it's quite a diverse campus of little student athletes. And the goal of these student athletes who come to IMG is really to pursue their sport and reach the highest level they can possible, and whether that's at the collegiate or professional level. Now, I often get kind of questions like, so Val, like, what do you do as a sports psychologist? Like, do athletes really need help, or athletes don't have mental health issues? Well, they do. And in fact, in a recent NCAA Sports Science Institute study, we see that student athletes are at as much risk, if not more risk, than their non-athlete peers. And this is because of the unique culture of athletics, one that really promotes toughness. It's about these increased time demands faced by our student athletes for practice, for training, for travel, for competition. This increased public scrutiny that they face, and for this athletic identity, which often is the only identity that they have. So, of course, when they're injured or things aren't going well in sport, they suffer quite a bit. Dr. Reese mentioned that 1 in 5 children around the ages of 13 to 18 will have a mental illness. And this is certainly true among the youth that we work with in schools. In a school setting, well, before I go there, to really kind of understand mental illness and how psychologists view mental illness, really the most basic way to describe that is to identify level of distress and level of dysfunction. And so you can imagine a continuum, right? And so on one end of this continuum is health, well-being, peak performance, self-actualization, right? So this is where we all want to be, right? On the other end of the continuum is illness. This is where we have high emotional distress, high emotional dysfunction. Now, our children on campuses and student athletes are walking along that entire continuum. We can call this the continuum of humanity, really. But I think it's useful to teach our gatekeepers on campuses and our students how to recognize these signs of distress and dysfunction so that they can engage and interact proactively and really kind of help before these issues become problematic. So the primary goal of most educational institutions nowadays, and particularly post-Virginia Tech massacre, is to promote safety and a safe and healthy campus. There's 3 key ways that psychologists can help campuses to do this. And one is to teach how to identify signs and symptoms of distress. So we teach students, we teach those campus gatekeepers, and those are anyone from faculty, administrators, coaches, all the way down to the kitchen staff and those serving at the cafeteria on what some of these signs and symptoms look like. Secondly, psychologists can help these campuses train students and gatekeepers on how to help, how to respond to these kids in distress. And thirdly, psychologists can help to establish or manage what are called threat assessment teams, so we can proactively really kind of respond to these issues. So let's go through each one of those briefly. So identifying signs and symptoms of students in distress. In your packet, you'll see a little handout, looks like this. It specifically talks about warning signs of violence. And I'm not going to specifically talk about that because what is much more prevalent are signs and symptoms of depression, as Dr. Reese touched on, and suicidality. And so some of these emotional distress signs that we might see as a gatekeeper or student are tearfulness, irritability, loss of interest. Some physiological signs are decreased energy, somatic complaints like headaches, stomach aches, disturbance of appetite and sleep, cognitive changes where there's this negative internal dialogue or self-talk. There might be suicidal thoughts, concentration is impaired, and behaviorally we might see withdrawal, we might see some isolation, avoidance behaviors, absenteeism, tardiness. And again, the idea of training each other and these gatekeepers on identifying these signs and symptoms is not just a one and done, but to look across a pattern of their functioning, both in the classroom, maybe on the field in their sport, at home, in their social arena. And so if we're seeing Jimmy, who is inattentive in class, absent, not participating in work, maybe this is Jimmy's regular behavior, so that wouldn't be a sign and symptom that a teacher necessarily would report. But if this is a student that's very conscientious, always on time, really producing quite consistent kind of A material, and all of a sudden is not showing up, is not consistent, that might be a sign of distress that we want to attend to. All right. So how do we help when we identify some of these signs and symptoms of distress? One is we can teach students and gatekeepers on some of these basic counseling skills. You don't have to be a psychologist or a licensed mental health professional to know how to do active listening, but this is something that we can teach. And oftentimes this is really the primary antidote, that if a teacher, or coach, or someone, or a student simply hears and listens, reflects back, that often can really just put someone at ease. Something else that we can do with schools is to teach prosocial behavior. This is creating cultures of care and concern. It's encouraging and empowering how to report concerning behavior, and also help-seeking behavior. And of course, it's teaching people who to tell, who to refer to. It's not teacher's responsibility or a coach's responsibility to be a psychologist, but it is your responsibility to identify signs and symptoms and get that student to the right channel. Lastly, psychologists can help school systems in organizing what are called threat assessment teams. These are called many different things. At IMG, we call it the Student Wellbeing Committee. Generally, these teams are multidisciplinary, which means there's many different people, many gatekeepers from different parts of campus who are on them. At IMG, I'm part of that. We have someone from health services, we have someone from the sport arena, we have administration, we have faculty, we have a disciplinary committee person. And the idea is to collect information from all these different sources to identify students who could be potentially at risk and to proactively and preventatively give services to these students to reduce that distress. So it could be maybe a referral to mental health care, it could be maybe mentoring, or maybe it's something in the classroom regarding accommodations. But in summary, instead of focusing on trying to prevent others from being violent, we should be focusing on promoting prosocial behavior and a culture of looking out for each other. The best way to manage potential risk is by advancing student health and well-being. Thank you.